choose what feels right for you right now, because I want to encourage people who are getting in the field to do things that make them happy and get them excited about exploring the field and learning.
Do you ever have so many questions and no one to ask, so they're just wasting away on Google searches you'll forget about in an hour or so?
We had that same problem, and that's why we created the RD2BE podcast, a resource for dietetic and nutrition students looking for answers that their peers don't have.
We are students Macy and Emily and registered dietitian Carl Barnes. We engage in conversations and learn from RDs.
Join us weekly as we gain insight into the unique journeys of registered dietitians all over the country.
Welcome back to another week of the RD2BE podcast. I'm your registered dietitian host, Carl Barnes. This is our weekly podcast where we sit down with a different registered dietitian each week to highlight the diversity of opportunity in the profession and really dismantle this notion that there is a traditional career path by highlighting awesome dietitians and all that they do. So super excited to be sitting down with Yasi Ansari today. She's a registered dietitian nutritionist, certified specialist in sports dietetics, as well as a national media spokesperson for the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. Really excited to learn more about you. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll pass it off to Emily to take it away.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here today. So you're obviously a woman with many hats. So how would you mind talking a little bit about the many jobs that you have?
Hi, Emily. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited. So I have two main jobs right now. UCLA Medical Center. It's the UCLA Health Hospital in Santa Monica, and I'm building my private practice, which is Yasi Ansari Nutrition. When it comes to the many hats, I think what you're probably referring to is mostly my volunteering roles. And my volunteering roles, I volunteer with the National Media Spokesperson program through the Academy, where we collaborate with various media outlets to share research supported nutritional information on various topics. And I also volunteer with the Sports and Human Performance Nutrition Dietetic Practice Group as part of the Academy. So I help with their social media, and I help with building fact sheets for an organization called Athletes in the Arts, which is a coalition of various organizations that are helping bring health and performance awareness about performing artists. And then finally, I have a little passion project. It's called My Dance Nutrition. It's Melissa and Yasi Dance Nutrition. And that's just a resource hub for those who are in the dance world to bring about good and solid nutrition information to them.
Great. So really quickly, do you mind just talking a little bit about what you do as the National Media Spokesperson?
Yeah, as the National Media Spokesperson for the Academy, we're a group of registered dietitians who we will get, a media request, whether that's from radio, a podcast, TV, magazines, and we just share nutrition information as part of the Academy. And it's nice because we each have our own, we're all experts in our own various fields. So there may be someone who's a child nutrition expert. For me, it's a sports nutrition and eating disorder expert. And it's nice to be able to, share information that's backed by science, and it's information that we feel is solid and a good source of information that can be shared with the public and can be trusted. So, and it's all coming from registered dietitian nutritionists. That's something that we stress as well, because we try to make it really clear that everyone can be a nutritionist, but not everyone is a registered dietitian nutritionist. So as part of the Academy, it's really cool to get to share a bunch of nutrition information that people can trust. And I want to say that it's also a great opportunity for anyone that might be interested to get involved and to apply, because you do get to build a ton of connections with the media, and you really start building your confidence when you share nutrition information with other media outlets. And it's just a great way of getting your name out there and building confidence and not being afraid to take the next step in your career.
Great. I feel like, kind of like you mentioned, there a lot of people can't differentiate between a nutritionist and a registered dietitian nutritionist. So it's great that we have that avenue through the academy to help differentiate between the two jobs for just people in general. So you have a strong clinical background. So did you always want to do clinical, or do you have another career path while you were going through undergrad?
When I went through undergrad, I don't know if many people know this about me, but I'm a second career dietitian. So I actually started off as a mass communication studies major at UCLA. And I had dreams of becoming a newscaster. I wanted to be an anchor, and I volunteered for like NBC 11 and other media outlets when I was like 16 through 18. Like, it was everything I wanted to do. I just wanted to be in the news. And my mom actually got diagnosed with cancer when I was 20. And through that experience, I think a lot of people have a similar experience where they go into nutrition because of just wanting to help someone that they may have been affected by, or just wanting to just help others, really. I think we all have that common goal of helping others. And so when she was diagnosed with cancer, I really just wanted to help patients who had been also diagnosed with cancer, and helping them eat better while they were in treatment and helping them feel strong. And so I shifted careers after I graduated. I did graduate with a mass communication studies degree. And then I went to Cal State University Northridge for the nutrition and dietetics program. And after that, I ended up volunteering for cancer hospitals in Los Angeles. And it was my way of, getting my foot in the door and doing what I could to get that experience. And I wanted to become a dietitian that focused in oncology. I wanted to be in a clinical setting, and that's what I did as my first job. And then I shifted over to sports. So to answer your question, the first career goal was journalism, and then I did go into clinical nutrition afterwards.
Well, you definitely combined the two.
Yeah.
So that's very, a lot of people do like their first career, and then sometimes it doesn't even have anything to do with becoming a dietitian. So it's great that yours can go hand in hand and help in roles like the National Media Spokesperson.
Yeah. And I will say that with clinical nutrition, I think after I did the oncology work and the role that I had with the hospital, I shifted over to sports. But I always say that everyone's first job should have a clinical component. That's really how I feel, because I think that you'll get a lot of good knowledge and information, especially if you're going to be counseling on a one-on-one basis for different conditions. Of course, if you're like in food service, maybe not so much, but with counseling, I think it's so key to have that clinical background.
Of course. So I know now you're working with like a collegiate population at UC Berkeley, or you worked at UC Berkeley and now at UCLA. So what made you switch from that oncology aspect to sports and working with collegiate athletes?
Yeah. And so right now with UCLA, I work at their hospital with eating disorders. My previous roles have been with athletics at UC Berkeley and at UCLA athletics. The shift really came when I was in grad school. So again, during that time, my mom was undergoing treatment, and it was appropriate for me to switch during that time, because I just needed a getaway, and I needed something that was a little different in energy, and something that just felt more appropriate during that time for me. I also grew up a dancer, so I was dancing competitively, and dance had always been a big piece of my life. And during my grad program, I had a graduate, my professor, she was Dr. Barrick, and I'm sure so many people know her that are listening to this podcast, but Dr. Barrick is amazing. And I was so inspired by her work. And from her, she was working with UCLA at the time, and she was sharing that that there was an opportunity to be a sports nutrition volunteer. And I threw myself into that opportunity. I worked so hard in that role. It was everything for me. And I basically worked my way up to becoming a sports dietitian for UCLA athletics. But through that role, it was just energetic. It was fun. It's so fun to be in the collegiate environment, to be around students who are active. And it reminded me a lot of my competitive nature with dance. And it was nice to see how nutrition impacted athletes, and getting to educate in the role that I had. I created a lot of educational content. I helped with their fueling stations, and I got to do a lot of hydration testing during that time. And then working with teams I was really passionate about, like gymnastics for a little bit, and swim and dive. And they were just so awesome to get to work with.
Most definitely. So I guess obviously you're working with collegiate athletes in the sports sense. How did you have like an impact with eating disorders and in that kind of realm?
I don't know what happened. Like, I don't know where it started, but I think it's because I had that clinical piece in my background, where I was, a lot of the sports med physicians were referring a lot of the athletes who had been diagnosed with an eating disorder or had disordered eating to me. And so I started working with them one-on-one, and I just built such a passion for that group. Because again, being in the dance world, you see a lot of that, and you're in this culture of it's like a diet culture, even within dance and performing arts. You have to look a certain way, or at least people think you need to look a certain way. There's a lot of misinformation that's spread within the dance groups. And so it reminded me a lot of what I had gone through as a dancer. It was really fun fun and inspiring. Fun in the sense that it was nice to see how nutrition helped give them energy. It was fun to see how it was nice to see that when we connected about, nutritional aspects that helped their health, that they were able to see that they needed to nourish their bodies for their sport. So that was really what was inspiring for me when working with that population. And when I went on to UC Berkeley athletics, I also worked with a lot of athletes that had been diagnosed with an eating disorder or had disordered eating, or just were at risk of bone stress injuries, and trying to basically investigate what was going on and helping them work through all of it.
Well, yeah, it's a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
like just hearing so far of like what we've talked about, a lot of what you've seen and like gone through like with life has like translated to your job. And I feel like that's so important that you're doing things that like you're passionate about, working with dancers, getting into that oncology unit, working with athletes. I just feel like a lot of people don't have that, I don't want to say luxury, but that ability to really connect with their jobs the way that you have.
Yeah. And anytime, I was one of those students that anytime something inspired me, I went after it. Like I said, if my professor shared something about UCLA, and I went to UCLA as an undergrad, and I was like, oh my God, I always loved UCLA athletics. And I always loved being part of the Bruin network, and then getting to combine nutrition with the Bruins. That was, what else could I have wanted, And if anything was of interest to me, I would just volunteer and explore it and see if I liked it. So it never came easy. I just went after it a lot, and I kept emailing and I kept bugging people. And I would just, even after conferences, I remember there were sports dietitians that I was so amazed and inspired by. I would literally wait in line with all the other dietitians that waited in line to like talk to them after they presented. And I'd be that person. I waited and I talked to them, and I asked them if they had any volunteering opportunities, and I just introduced myself. I was that person. So there's hope for anyone who wants to get experience in a variety of fields that they are interested in.
That's the journalism coming in.
Yeah.
So in addition to your being like a sports dietitian and certified in that, did you ever consider getting an eating disorder specialty like certification or?
Yeah, great question. Eventually I'll probably get that specialty as well. It's just not right now.
Does not having that specialty prevent you from working with people who have eating disorders, or what does that certification really mean?
So the CED RD is great for anyone who wants that specialty in eating disorders. And it's a great one. I have thought about it. Right now, my focus is on in other areas, but when it comes to job opportunities, there are some opportunities that look for that specialty. However, the experience for me has, it's been something that the medical professionals that I've worked with have trusted in. So in my current role, I work for a medical stabilization program at UCLA Health at the Santa Monica Hospital. And it's an inpatient program for eating disorders that need to be medically stabilized. And so with that opportunity, they really just liked the fact that I had all the experience that I've had and they didn't require that specialty. So for me, I think it's that experience. But with sports opportunities, a lot of employers are looking for the CSSD.
Oh, okay. So it kind of just depends on the certification.
Yeah, it depends on the certification, your experience, and who you're working for, really.
Awesome. Well, you've had many, accomplishments with your current job. So what are some challenges or things you've had to overcome with all your job roles?
The main challenge has been navigating the diet culture world. And what I mean by this is we live in a society that loves quick fixes. There's always a new trend, and navigating that has been a little bit of a challenge. So when I'm working one-on-one with athletes or just clients who are looking to meet their health goals, just be healthier, it's like I hear tons of questions about like, oh, I heard this is really good for you and I want to try this because so-and-so did it, or I saw a lifestyle professional, like a lifestyle person on social media posting about it. And I have to sometimes debunk myths. And it's really hard if it's something that someone believes in or someone they trust likes, implementing that in their day-to-day. For example, the chlorophyll drops or just little things that I'm like, okay, you could also do that from food. You can get your needs met through foods. Or celery juicing in the morning, like whatever it is. Like I'm all about listening to the things that everyone likes to do. It's just navigating how to communicate that they can also do those things through food and meet their needs through foods. When it comes to changing their weight, meeting certain health goals, I have to stay really neutral about that because I don't ever want anyone to feel like they have to change their body to love it. I want them to love the body that they're in. And that is probably one of the biggest challenges in my role. With the sports field, there's other indicators of other performance indicators that someone can use to identify if they're, improving in their sport and their strength and power and all that, without having to change their body or going on a diet to change their body. It's like everyone automatically thinks like they have to change their body to improve in whatever it is that they need to improve in. So that's probably the biggest challenge, is navigating the diet culture world. It's very, very hard, and I'm trying to navigate it, and I'm trying to do the best that I can with it and trying to be patient with everyone that I communicate with. I think that's our role as dietitians. I think another thing that's really important is to hear what your clients have to say, to hear what everyone's thoughts are about different things that they come to face with in terms of nutritional, just nutrition implementations that they want to take part in. And so I want to be patient with them, listen to why they're trying to follow a certain diet or an eating behavior, and then come up with a plan that they can sustain for a long amount of time. That's not going to make them feel negative about their body or want to change their body.
Of course. So you've sat through the RD exam, you've done undergrad, you've done all the things you have to do to become a sports dietitian or become a dietitian, then a sports dietitian. And I know that you just mentioned that it's hard to deal with athletes who are listening to outside influences like their parents, like their coaches, celebrities. So how do you as an RD try to share your knowledge, if that makes any sense?
In one-on-one counseling, I will create like a nutrition plan that's individualized for the athlete. So I'll ask them about all the foods that they've always loved to eat. I'll ask them about what their eating patterns are and what their training looks like. And I take a non-diet approach when I do counseling. And from there, we see the changes that can take place with their performance. And then they're like, oh, Yasi, that actually really worked. And just because so-and-so is doing this, maybe it's not the best for me. I might let them try certain things that they think they want to try. And then we'll come back and we'll assess it. We'll talk about the pros and cons. We'll talk about the research. We'll talk about why something works for somebody else and maybe not for this particular athlete. So I like to get all the information that I can and come up with a plan that the athlete's really happy with. And so am I, in terms of it meeting their needs and protecting their health. Because there's a lot of information out there, and just because a parent or a coach might make a recommendation, I don't think they're coming from a bad place. Like, they're just sharing what they know and what they hear and what they think works. And it's not always something that they're not trying to hurt the athlete. They're just trying to help them. And they might not have all the information that I have because of the schooling that I've gone through and what has worked with other athletes and just what I know is supported by research. And just because something is supported by research doesn't mean it works for everyone. So at the end of the day, we try, we experiment, and we see what works for every specific athlete and what they can sustain. I always say that I want them to implement eating practices that are going to give them energy and strength, but also meet their needs and not put them at risk of injury. And it's something that is sustainable for their whole life and their current circumstance. So if someone's in college and you're recommending, or they're changing their eating pattern, you want to make sure that it's realistic for them. They're also going to be traveling a lot. So you want to make sure it's realistic for the life that they have.
Of course. And I feel like what you said about just because research supports something doesn't really mean it works for everybody. I feel like in our heads we know that, but just vocalizing that, I haven't really heard anybody say that. So it was good to have that reinforcement that obviously not everything works for everybody, but especially with research and those findings.
Yeah. And I also want to say that when you become a dietitian, it's important to also respect everyone's differences. Just be patient with everyone, be respectful, respect others' opinions, and take advantage of implementing different practices and see what works for your specific clients or specific population that you're working with.
Great. So I guess transitioning a little bit to the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. So obviously the Academy is a great resource for dietetic professionals and students. So what things do you think are underutilized for the Academy?
So SHPN, the Sports and Human Performance Nutrition Dietetic Practice Group, they have a ton of fact sheets. So if anyone is a volunteer or is working one-on-one with athletes or has the goal of working one-on-one with athletes as a sports dietitian, looking at those fact sheets and just reading about the different sports that they have education on, that would be a great resource. Connections. So with the Academy, what I think is so awesome and important is the connections that you build through the Academy. It's the dietitians that you can connect with, learn from, and hopefully volunteer with, because I did all of that. And then also just simply learning from people who are successful in this field. I think it's just great to to take advantage of all the opportunities that the Academy has. They have a bunch of different dietetic practice groups. So getting involved with one that is of interest to you and learning from them and taking advantage of the email resources that they send out. I feel like sometimes I don't even look at all the emails, but there are a list of research that's being sent via email. And it's important for people to read through them if you can, or at least the ones that pertain to your specific interest. And then see what's out in the news, because then you can keep up to date with the different practices that are in the media right now and what consumers may be implementing in their own lives and learning about it, so that if someone asks you a question, you could be like, oh, actually, there's some research that supports this, but then also some research that supports this. So it's nice to have a good picture of the whole picture and to have all that information.
Of course. So you're very active on social media, like LinkedIn, Instagram, stuff like that. You're starting up a private practice right now. You work with athletes. So how active and important do you think it is to be on social media and other platforms for just you individually?
I think it's really important to be on social media to connect if you want to bring in clients to your practice. With social media, I think it's a great form of expression. As of the last month, I haven't been as active on social media as I want to be, more so because I'm just trying to find my voice around social media. I'm very human and I'm not afraid to share, the thoughts that come for me in terms of social media platforms and what I might be struggling with. But with social media too, just taking that month break has been nice to just explore other avenues to connect with clients. So your website is so important. I actually would encourage people who are about to become a dietitian and want to work one-on-one with someone, make sure you have a solid website. That is actually more important, in my opinion, than social media. Social media will help connect with people, but when people search your name, you want a nice website to come up. So that's a great way for people to connect with you, and having a page where they can email you and connect with you and learn more about your services would be a great way to bring more clients in. So that's what I would be recommending. But social media is great, especially if you have a TikTok account. That could be a great educational resource for people that don't know much about nutrition and want some like healthy snacks or healthy meals, or just want some quick facts. But you don't always have to be fully active on social media. Take advantage of the other resources that you can use to connect with people outside of the field.
Yeah, I don't really think people understand how, like, a simple 10-second TikTok, you can learn so much if you watch and you learn so many things on social media, even though some people are like, just don't be on it. It's brainwashing, stuff like that. I follow so many RDs on TikTok, and I cook I cook so differently now. I learned so many different recipes, different, combinations of food. It's a great educational avenue as well.
Yeah, I think TikTok is great. Twitter, I don't use it as much. LinkedIn, it's important for everyone to have a LinkedIn for sure. And then even a blog, if you have a blog, it's another great it's like a great place for self-expression and writing about a specific nutrition topic.
Of course. So I guess my last question is, what piece of advice do you have for dietetic students who are wanting to get into the profession?
Don't be afraid to take on new opportunities and be curious. And through school, any opportunity that does interest you, just explore it and get as much experience as you can, but also don't stress too much about it. I had a student reach out to me recently. It was a previous intern of mine, and she's like, Yasi, what do I do when it comes to my dietetic internship? Do I choose a dietetic internship that's more focused on pediatrics, or do I go with an adult clinical setting? And I feel like this one decision is going to decide everything else in my life. And I said, no, it's actually not. Like, just choose what feels right for you right now, because I want to encourage people who are getting in the field to do things that make them happy and get them excited about exploring the field and learning, because whatever is meant for you is going to show up eventually. So just do what feels right now. And then the next thing that feels right, try that too, if you're open to it. And then it's interesting because the goals that I had at the beginning of my career, as I have shared with you, Emily, is I went through so many twists and turns in my career, and I ended up exactly where I wanted to be in the beginning. And it was really just because I was like, oh, I have an interest in that. Let me go reach out to this person and maybe volunteer for them. I did volunteer a lot of free work that I did. So make sure you have a job, because you need a job. But also, if you have the opportunity to volunteer, it's a great way to see what works for you, what you like, what you don't like. And then you can focus more on the things you do like. And then you'll eventually transition into a role that makes sense for you.
Great. Well, thank you so much for taking time out to speak with us today. It was great to hear about your breadth of knowledge.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. It was awesome.